Once, a man walked into a phone repair shop holding a broken phone. The technician looked at it and said, "Sir, the screen is shattered because it fell too many times." The man replied, "But I kept picking it up every time it fell." The technician smiled and said, "That's good, but maybe next time protect it before it falls." Friends, many of us are like that phone. We fall, we break, we struggle, we keep getting up, but we forget to protect ourselves. That protection is called self-love. Self-love is one of the most misunderstood ideas in our lives. Many people hesitate to accept it because they confuse it with ego, arrogance, or selfishness. They think that loving oneself means looking down on others or putting oneself above everyone else. But self-love has nothing to do with feeling superior. It has everything to do with feeling secure. Self-love does not say, "I am better than you." Self-love quietly says, "I am enough." There is a big difference between ego and self-love. Ego builds walls, self-love builds roots. Ego needs constant validation. Self-love grows even in silence. When ego is hurt, it reacts with anger. When self-love is strong, it responds with understanding. Ego shouts, self-love listens. Self-love begins with respect. The same respect we easily offer to others, listening patiently, forgiving mistakes, giving second chances. We often deny ourselves. We expect perfection from ourselves, but allow growth in others. We judge our own failures harshly while explaining everyone else's mistakes gently. Self-love is the decision to offer yourself the same compassion you freely give to the world. It also means accepting that you are human. You will have good days and bad days. Some days you will feel confident, and some days you will doubt yourself. Self-love does not mean you never feel insecure. It means you don't hate yourself for feeling insecure. It means you don't abandon yourself when life becomes difficult. Self-love is caring for your inner world. It is being aware of your thoughts and noticing how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. If your inner voice is constantly critical, life becomes heavy even when things are going well. When your inner voice is kind, even challenges feel manageable. Self-love slowly transforms that inner dialogue from harsh judgment to gentle guidance. It is also important to understand what self-love is not. It is not ignoring your flaws or refusing to improve. True self-love actually encourages growth. When you care about something, you want it to become better. In the same way, loving yourself means improving not from self-hatred, but from self-respect. You grow because you value yourself, not because you think you are worthless. Self-love teaches balance. It allows confidence without arrogance and humility without self-doubt. You can acknowledge your strengths without guilt and accept your weaknesses without shame. You stop competing with others and start understanding yourself. You no longer need to prove your worth because you are no longer questioning it. At its core, self-love is a relationship, the relationship you have with yourself. And just like any healthy relationship, it requires patience, honesty, forgiveness, and care. When this relationship is strong, the world outside may still challenge you, but it will no longer control how you see yourself. Self-love is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming peaceful with who you are while continuing to grow into who you can be. It is interesting how naturally we care for others and how difficult it feels to care for ourselves. When someone else is in pain, we listen. When someone else fails, we reassure them. When someone else feels lost, we remind them of their potential. But when it comes to our own struggles, we become impatient, critical, and unforgiving. This difference does not come from lack of kindness, it comes from habit. From a very young age, many of us are taught to be accommodating. We learn to share, adjust, and sacrifice. We are praised for being helpful, obedient, and selfless. Slowly, without realizing it, we start believing that our value lies in how much we give to others. Over time, caring for ourselves begins to feel like something we must earn, not something we deserve. We also grow up watching examples around us. We see people who put themselves last being called strong and responsible. We see people who speak up for their needs being labeled difficult or selfish. These messages quietly shape our thinking. We start measuring our goodness by how much discomfort we can tolerate and how much emotional weight we can carry without complaining. Another reason we love others more easily is because we see them with softer eyes. We understand their background, their pressures, their limitations. We give them the benefit of the doubt. With ourselves, we do the opposite. We see every flaw up close. We replay every mistake. We remember every moment we could have done better. Familiarity with our own imperfections makes us less patient with ourselves. There is also the burden of expectation. We know our own potential, and when we fall short of it, disappointment turns inward. We feel that we should know better, do better, be better by now. Others are allowed to learn slowly, but we expect instant maturity from ourselves. This unrealistic standard becomes a quiet source of self-criticism. Loving others also feels safer. When we focus on someone else's needs, we avoid facing our own unresolved emotions. Caring for others can sometimes become a way of escaping ourselves. But the emotions we ignore do not disappear. They simply wait for our attention. Self-love requires courage because it asks us to sit with our own feelings honestly. We also seek acceptance. Pleasing others often brings approval, appreciation, and a sense of belonging. Loving ourselves does not always give immediate rewards. It is quiet, internal, and unseen. Because of that, it feels less urgent. Yet without it, external validation never feels enough. Learning to love yourself does not mean loving others less. It means stopping the habit of self-neglect. When you begin to offer yourself the same understanding, patience, and forgiveness that you give to others, something shifts. You no longer feel drained by kindness. You no longer feel invisible in your own life. The moment you realize that you too deserve care, your compassion becomes complete. There is a conversation happening inside you all the time. Even when the world is quiet, this conversation never stops. It comments on your actions, judges your decisions, and reminds you of your past. This inner voice has more influence over your life than most people realize, because you hear it more than any other voice in the world. For many people, this voice is not kind. It constantly points out what is missing, what went wrong, and what could have been better. It reminds you of mistakes long after the lesson has already been learned. It compares you with others and convinces you that you are falling behind. Over time, this voice becomes so familiar that you start believing it is the truth. But this voice was not born critical. It was shaped. It absorbed words from authority figures, reactions from society, and experiences from failure. A single comment repeated often enough turns into a belief. Slowly, external judgments become internal habits. What once came from outside now lives inside. The problem is not that the voice exists. The problem is that we rarely question it. We assume every thought is accurate and every self-criticism is deserved. But thoughts are not facts. Just because the mind says something does not mean it is true, helpful, or necessary. The way you speak to yourself determines how you handle life. When the inner voice is harsh, even success feels temporary and fragile. You may achieve something, but instead of feeling proud, the voice says it was luck or not enough. When challenges come, the voice becomes even louder. turning obstacles into personal failures. A supportive inner voice does not deny reality, but it responds with balance. Instead of saying, "You always fail," it says, "This did not work, but you can learn." Instead of saying, "You are not good enough," it says, "You are growing." This shift may seem small, but it changes how you experience everything. Self-love is learning to become aware of this inner dialogue. It is noticing the words you use for yourself and choosing them more carefully. You would never motivate a child by constant criticism, yet many people try to motivate themselves that way. What actually helps growth is encouragement, patience, and trust. When you change the way you talk to yourself, your relationship with life changes, fear becomes manageable, confidence feels natural instead of forced. You stop fighting yourself and start guiding yourself. The inner voice does not disappear, but it becomes an ally rather than an enemy. The strongest support system you will ever have is the one you build within yourself. Many people spend their entire lives carrying the weight of their past. A single mistake, a wrong decision, or a failed attempt becomes a label they attach to themselves. Instead of seeing it as something that happened, they begin to believe it is who they are. Over time, this belief quietly shapes their confidence, their choices, and their future. Mistakes are unavoidable because growth is unavoidable. Every step forward involves uncertainty, and uncertainty always carries the risk of getting things wrong. Yet the mind has a strange habit of remembering failures more clearly than efforts. You may have tried many times, learned many lessons, and improved in many ways, but one mistake can overshadow all of that in your memory. The danger lies in identifying with the mistake. When you say, "I failed," it is very different from saying, "I am a failure." One is an event, the other is an identity. Self-love begins when you separate the two. You acknowledge what went wrong without allowing it to define your worth. Holding onto past errors often feels like responsibility, but in reality it becomes self-punishment. You replay moments, imagine different outcomes, and criticize yourself for not knowing then what you know now. But no one can make a perfect decision with incomplete information. Every choice you made was based on your awareness at that time. There is also a fear that letting go of guilt means you might repeat the mistake. But growth does not come from shame, it comes from understanding. When you learn from an experience and release the emotional burden attached to it, you move forward wiser, not careless. People who succeed are not those who never fail, they are those who refuse to stay stuck in failure. They allow mistakes to become teachers instead of judges. They accept accountability without destroying self-respect. This balance is not easy, but it is necessary. Self-love allows you to look at your past with honesty and kindness at the same time. You take responsibility where needed, make amends if possible, and then choose to move on. You do not deny what happened, but you also do not let it control what comes next. When you stop defining yourself by your mistakes, you give yourself permission to grow. You stop living in fear of getting things wrong and start living with the courage to try again. The past remains a chapter in your story, not the title of your life. Comparison has quietly become a part of everyday life. Without realizing it, we measure our progress against someone else's achievements, our appearance against someone else's image, and our journey against someone else's timeline. This habit feels natural because it is everywhere, yet it slowly steals peace from the mind. The problem with comparison is not that we notice differences, but that we forget context. Everyone starts from a different place. Everyone carries different responsibilities, opportunities, struggles, and strengths. When you compare your life with another person's life, You are comparing two completely different stories as if they were written under the same circumstances. Modern life has made comparison more intense. You are constantly exposed to moments of success, happiness, and celebration from others, but rarely their struggles or doubts. What you see is a carefully chosen fragment, not the full picture. When you judge your entire life based on someone else's best moments, it creates unnecessary dissatisfaction. Comparison also creates a false sense of urgency. You begin to feel late, behind, or incomplete, even when you are moving at a pace that is right for you. Instead of appreciating your growth, you focus on what you lack. This mindset turns life into a race where the finish line keeps moving. Another hidden effect of comparison is that it disconnects you from your own values. You start chasing goals that are impressive rather than meaningful. You try to fit into standards that were never designed for you. Over time, this leads to exhaustion because living someone else's idea of success requires constant effort and brings little fulfillment. Self-love grows when you understand that uniqueness is not a disadvantage. Just as no two fingerprints are the same, no two life paths are meant to match. Progress looks different for everyone. Some grow quickly, some grow slowly, and both are valid. When you stop comparing, you create space for gratitude. You notice how far you have come instead of how far others seem to be. You begin to respect your own pace and trust your own timing. Confidence becomes calmer, less loud, and more stable. The moment you focus on your own journey, energy that was wasted on comparison turns into motivation. You stop competing and start becoming. Many people believe that being kind means always saying yes. They agree even when they are tired, uncomfortable, or overwhelmed. At first, this may feel generous, but over time it creates exhaustion and quiet resentment. What starts as kindness slowly turns into self-neglect. Boundaries are often misunderstood. They are not walls meant to push people away. They are lines that protect what matters. Without boundaries, energy leaks in every direction. With boundaries, life gains structure and balance. Setting limits is not about controlling others, but about taking responsibility for your own well-being. Saying no can feel uncomfortable, especially when you are used to pleasing others. There is fear of disappointing people, fear of being misunderstood, and fear of losing acceptance. But constantly choosing others at the cost of yourself teaches people that your needs come last. Over time, this pattern becomes expected. Self-love involves recognizing that your time, energy, and emotional capacity are limited. Just like money, they must be spent wisely. When you give too much without replenishing yourself, even the things you love begin to feel heavy. Boundaries ensure that your giving comes from fullness, not from pressure. Another important aspect of boundaries is emotional safety. You do not have to explain yourself to everyone. You do not have to tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or constant negativity. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. A calm mind allows you to show up better in every area of life. Healthy boundaries also bring clarity to relationships. People know where they stand with you. Expectations become realistic. Resentment reduces because you are not silently sacrificing and hoping others will notice. Honest boundaries prevent emotional burnout. When you begin to set boundaries, some people may resist. Not everyone benefits from your self-respect, but those who truly value you will adjust. They may not always agree, but they will understand. Self-love means being willing to accept temporary discomfort for long-term peace. Each time you honor your limits, you strengthen trust in yourself. You learn that you can protect your inner space without losing your kindness. Boundaries do not make you cold. They make your care sustainable. Many people treat rest as a reward instead of a necessity. They believe they must first exhaust themselves to earn the right to pause. This mindset creates a cycle where burnout becomes normal and fatigue is worn like a badge of honor. Over time, constant busyness disconnects people from their own needs. Self-care is often misunderstood as something indulgent or unnecessary. In reality, it is maintenance. Just as a vehicle cannot run forever without fuel and servicing, the human mind and body cannot function well without care. Ignoring this truth does not make a person stronger, it simply delays the consequences. When self-care is neglected, the first signs appear quietly. Irritation increases, focus decreases, joy feels distant, small problems feel heavy. These are not signs of weakness. They are signals asking for attention. Listening to them is an act of self-respect. Self-care does not always look dramatic or expensive. Sometimes it is choosing rest over extra effort. Sometimes it is stepping away from noise. Sometimes it is allowing yourself to slow down without guilt. These simple choices restore balance more effectively than occasional extremes. Many people feel guilty when they rest because they associate productivity with worth. If they are not doing something useful, they feel unimportant. But rest is what allows productivity to exist. A tired mind may work, but it does not create well. A rested mind brings clarity, creativity, and patience. Caring for yourself also means being honest about limits. There are seasons when you can push and seasons when you must pause. Self-love is recognizing the difference. Pushing all the time may look brave, but it often leads to emotional and physical exhaustion. When you take care of yourself consistently, life feels less overwhelming. Challenges still exist, but you have the strength to face them. You respond instead of reacting. You give from a place of stability rather than survival. Self-care is not about escaping responsibility. It is about sustaining yourself so you can meet responsibility with energy and presence. The body is often treated like a tool rather than a companion. It is pushed when it is tired, ignored when it sends signals, and criticized when it does not match expectations. Many people spend years being dissatisfied with their bodies, waiting for some future version before offering acceptance. This waiting creates distance between the person and the very place they live in every day. Your body carries you through every experience. It holds your memories, supports your efforts, and responds to your emotions. Stress tightens it, fear weakens it, and joy energizes it. When the mind is constantly critical, the body listens. Words spoken internally can create tension just as much as physical strain. Loving your body does not mean ignoring health or refusing to improve. It means caring enough to listen. Fatigue is not laziness, it is communication. Pain is not an enemy, it is a message. When you respond with awareness instead of frustration, healing becomes possible. Many people struggle with their bodies because they compare them to unrealistic standards. Images, expectations, and opinions create the belief that worth is tied to appearance. This belief leads to constant dissatisfaction, even when nothing is truly wrong. Self-love begins when you understand that your body's value is not defined by comparison. The way you treat your body shapes your relationship with yourself. Gentle movement builds respect. Nourishing food builds trust. Rest builds repair. These are not punishments for imperfection. They are expressions of care. When you treat your body kindly, it responds with resilience. Accepting your body as it is today does not prevent growth. In fact, it supports it. Change that comes from hatred is harsh and unsustainable. Change that comes from care is steady and lasting. When you work with your body instead of against it, progress feels natural. Your body is not something you own temporarily. It is where your life unfolds. Treating it with patience and appreciation transforms not just physical health, but emotional stability as well. Emotions are often treated as obstacles rather than signals. From an early age, many people learn to hide what they feel, believing that strength means control and silence. Over time, this habit creates a disconnect between what is felt and what is expressed. The emotions do not disappear, they simply move inward. Ignoring emotions may seem practical in the moment, but unprocessed feelings accumulate. They show up as stress, sudden anger, fatigue, or emptiness. When emotions are repeatedly pushed aside, the mind carries a constant background tension that slowly drains energy. Being emotionally aware does not mean being overwhelmed by feelings. It means noticing them without judgment. Sadness does not make someone weak. Fear does not mean failure. Confusion does not indicate incompetence. These emotions are part of being human, and acknowledging them is a form of intelligence. Many people fear their emotions because they believe that feeling deeply will disrupt their stability. In reality, stability comes from understanding, not suppression. When you name what you feel, it becomes manageable. When you deny it, it controls you quietly. Self-love involves giving yourself permission to feel without rushing to fix everything. Not every emotion requires an immediate solution. Sometimes it simply requires presence. Allowing space for feelings creates clarity, and clarity leads to better decisions. Emotional awareness also helps in understanding patterns. When certain situations repeatedly trigger strong reactions, they reveal unmet needs or unresolved experiences. Paying attention to these patterns allows growth. Ignoring them repeats the cycle. When you become comfortable with your emotions, you stop fearing them. You learn to respond instead of reacting. You communicate more honestly, set healthier boundaries, and understand yourself more deeply. Emotional awareness does not complicate life. It simplifies it by removing confusion. Being in touch with your emotions strengthens inner balance and builds resilience from within. Many people unknowingly hand over control of their self-worth to the opinions of others. A compliment can lift their mood instantly, while criticism can ruin an entire day. When validation becomes the measure of value, confidence turns fragile and dependent on external approval. The desire to be appreciated is natural. Everyone wants to feel seen and accepted. The problem begins when appreciation becomes a necessity rather than a bonus. When your sense of worth depends on recognition, silence feels like rejection and disagreement feels like failure. Seeking validation often comes from uncertainty within. When you are unsure of yourself, you look outward for confirmation. Likes, praise, and approval temporarily fill that gap, but the relief never lasts. The moment validation fades, doubt returns, creating a cycle of dependence. Living for approval slowly changes behavior. You begin adjusting your choices to meet expectations rather than truth. You say what is safe instead of what is honest. You choose what looks impressive instead of what feels meaningful. Over time, this creates inner conflict because your actions no longer align with your values. Self-love builds inner validation. It means acknowledging your efforts even when no one else notices. It means trusting your intentions without needing constant reassurance. When you validate yourself, feedback becomes information, not a verdict. Releasing the need for validation does not mean ignoring others or becoming indifferent. It means listening without losing yourself. You can accept appreciation with gratitude and criticism with openness, without allowing either to define you. When your sense of worth is rooted within, peace becomes steady. You are no longer shaken by every opinion. Confidence becomes quieter, deeper, and more stable. You act with integrity because it feels right, not because it will be applauded. Freedom begins when you stop asking the world to confirm what you already know about yourself. Forgiving yourself is often harder than forgiving others. You may understand that people make mistakes, that circumstances influence behavior, and that growth takes time. Yet when it comes to your own actions, the mind holds on to guilt tightly, replaying moments again and again, as if punishment will somehow correct the past. Guilt can feel like responsibility, but there is a fine line between accountability and self-condemnation. Accountability helps you learn and change. Self-condemnation keeps you stuck. When guilt turns into constant self-blame, it no longer serves a purpose. It becomes a burden that drains energy and clouds judgment. Many people believe that holding on to guilt proves they care, or that it prevents them from repeating the mistake. In reality, shame does not create wisdom. Understanding creates wisdom. Once the lesson is learned, continuing to punish yourself adds nothing of value. Forgiving yourself does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means acknowledging what went wrong, understanding why it happened, and choosing not to define yourself by it. It is an act of courage because it requires honesty without cruelty. Unforgiven guilt affects the present. It influences confidence, relationships, and decision-making. You may hesitate to try again, afraid of repeating the past. You may accept less than you deserve, believing you must make up for what you did. This quiet self-punishment limits growth. Self-love allows space for compassion toward yourself. It recognizes that growth often comes through experience, not perfection. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to move forward wiser than before. When you forgive yourself, you release emotional weight. You regain clarity and strength. You stop living in apology and start living with intention. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it frees the future from its shadow. Many people expect themselves to change instantly. They decide to improve and assume that progress should be quick, smooth, and visible. When results take time, frustration appears, doubt follows, slowly motivation fades. This impatience often has nothing to do with lack of effort and everything to do with unrealistic expectations. Growth is rarely dramatic. Most of it happens quietly, through small choices repeated consistently. A slight improvement in habits, a subtle shift in thinking, or a calmer response to challenges may not look impressive, but these changes accumulate over time. The problem is that people often overlook slow progress because they are focused on big outcomes. Being patient with yourself means accepting that learning takes time. You will make progress and then take a step back. You will understand something intellectually long before it becomes natural in practice. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. Self-criticism often appears when progress does not match expectations. Instead of acknowledging effort, the mind focuses on what is still missing. This constant pressure creates resistance. Growth thrives in encouragement, not punishment. Patience allows space for reflection. It helps you adjust without giving up. When you treat yourself with understanding during setbacks, you remain consistent. Consistency, not intensity, is what leads to lasting change. Every stage of growth serves a purpose. Struggle builds awareness. Repetition builds strength. Time builds confidence. Rushing the process only creates burnout. Respecting the process builds stability. Self-love means trusting that you are moving forward even when the results are not immediately visible. It means allowing yourself to grow at a pace that is sustainable. When patience replaces pressure, growth becomes a natural part of life. Being alone is often misunderstood as something negative. Many people associate it with loneliness, emptiness, or rejection. Because of this, they constantly seek noise, company, or distraction. Silence feels uncomfortable, not because it is harmful, but because it forces awareness. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness feels like something is missing. Solitude feels like something is settling. When you spend time alone with awareness, you begin to understand your thoughts instead of running from them. This understanding builds inner stability. Constant interaction can blur self-identity. When you are always surrounded by opinions, expectations, and influences, it becomes difficult to hear your own voice. Time alone creates space to reflect, realign, and recharge. It brings clarity to what truly matters. Many people avoid solitude because it reveals emotions they have been suppressing. But facing these emotions gently is how healing begins. When you stop escaping yourself, you start understanding yourself. This understanding reduces inner conflict. Alone time strengthens independence. You stop relying on others to regulate your emotions or define your mood. You become comfortable with your own presence. This comfort creates confidence that does not depend on constant reassurance. When you value your own company, relationships become healthier. You connect by choice, not by need. You enjoy togetherness without fear of being alone. This balance brings emotional maturity. Spending time with yourself is not about isolation, it is about connection within. When you can sit with yourself peacefully, the world feels less overwhelming and more meaningful. When you begin to respect yourself, the way you relate to others naturally changes. Many relationship struggles do not come from lack of love, but from lack of self-worth. When you do not value yourself, you tolerate behavior that slowly erodes your peace. You stay silent when something hurts and hope that understanding will come without communication. Without self-love, relationships often become imbalanced. One person gives more, adjusts more, and sacrifices more, while the other decides the limits. This pattern is rarely intentional, but it develops when boundaries are unclear. Over time, unspoken expectations turn into disappointment. Loving yourself does not make you demanding, it makes you clear. You express your needs without guilt. You listen without losing yourself. You no longer confuse attachment with love or intensity with connection. This clarity creates healthier emotional exchanges. When self-love is present, you stop chasing attention and start attracting respect. You choose relationships that feel safe, supportive, and honest. You walk away from dynamics that drain you, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Self-love also improves communication. When you are secure within, you do not react defensively. You listen to understand rather than to protect your ego. Disagreements become conversations instead of conflicts. Another shift happens in expectations. You stop expecting others to fill emotional gaps that only you can address. This removes pressure from relationships and allows genuine connection to grow. When you value yourself, relationships become a place of sharing rather than proving. You show up as you are, and that authenticity deepens trust and connection. When you begin to love yourself, the change does not remain limited to you. It quietly spreads into every area of your life. The way you think, speak, and respond starts to shift, and others can feel that difference without you having to announce it. Self-love creates an inner calm that naturally reflects outward. People who are at peace with themselves do not carry unnecessary anger. They do not react impulsively or seek conflict to feel powerful. Their stability influences the atmosphere around them. A calm presence has a way of easing tension and making others feel safe. Self-love also improves how you treat people. When you are not constantly battling self-doubt or insecurity, you become more patient and understanding. You listen better, you judge less. Kindness becomes natural instead of forced because it is no longer used to seek approval. Another powerful effect of self-love is inspiration. Without trying to teach or impress, you become an example. Others notice your confidence, your balance, and your boundaries. This often encourages them to reflect on their own lives. Growth spreads quietly through example, not instruction. When self-love is present, resilience increases. Challenges still come, but they no longer break you easily. This strength allows you to support others without losing yourself. You give from abundance, not exhaustion. Self-love also creates honesty. You live with integrity because you are aligned within. This authenticity builds trust in relationships, workplaces, and communities. People sense consistency and respond with respect. The most powerful impact of self-love is that it creates harmony. When individuals are at peace with themselves, they contribute to a more compassionate and balanced world. Change does not always begin with loud action. Sometimes it begins with quiet inner acceptance. As this journey comes together, remember this one simple truth. The relationship you have with yourself is the foundation of every other relationship in your life. When that foundation is weak, everything feels unstable. When it is strong, life feels steady even during storms. Self-love is not about becoming someone else. It is about finally standing by who you already are. It is choosing kindness over criticism, understanding over judgment, and patience over pressure. It is learning to walk with yourself instead of constantly fighting within. You do not need to be perfect to be worthy. You do not need approval to be valuable. You only need the courage to treat yourself with the same care you so freely offer to others. When you begin to respect yourself, your life responds. Your choices become clearer. Your energy becomes calmer. Your presence becomes stronger. And the most beautiful part is this. When you truly learn to love yourself, you don't just change your own life. You quietly change the world around you.